SMT Nation, We Back Nation. This is an interesting press release here, a news article from Verizon. They acquired some data, ran some surveys on first responders, and first responders offered some really interesting insights into what's important to them and what they consider when they choose networks and what connectivity really means for them and what they need. And one of the things I thought about was, T-Mobile and how they try to penetrate this market, or this market segment, I should say. T-Mobile takes the consumer, right? They really do compete very fiercely for customers in that space. They're doing good things in business in some instances. They're getting more customers than they ever have previously. So they're in those conversations in some places. They grow in rural. They've got fixed wireless access growth. But something that they talk about occasionally, but don't really give us any numbers or show any solid traction in, is first responders. They simply aren't in that marketplace to penetrate. And it's an uphill battle. It's tough for them to do that. They've got an old moniker perception from consumers that they're a lesser reliable network than their competitors. AT&T has the FirstNet contract. Verizon has always been the first responder network going back decades, for calling. And they're still in that conversation, even with FirstNet and their strengths. T-Mobile struggles, right? So let's take a look at what first responders want when they make the decision for network access, what really matters to them. And let's see if there's something that T-Mobile can approach to kind of change this narrative. All right, so we'll cover that all here in today's video. I'll be sure to link this article for you in the description. And of course, if you want to support the SMT YouTube channel and the content here, appreciate it, you could support us as well. Links are in the description. All right, so here are some of the findings from this public safety communications survey from the Verizon Frontline. In its third year of operation, it looks like they're continuing to collect this data and use it to drive how they do business. All right, so number one, most important factor, it's network reliability. It is the critical tool and process for first responders. More than half of the survey respondents cited a reliable and resilient network as the most important factor in day-to-day professional communications. Almost as important, or I should say within terminology and framework, said that reliability and speed were the most important factors. Okay, so reliability, resilience, then reliability and speed. Reliability is still number one, right? And sometimes the speed is the resilience of the network, right? The ability to continue to offer the capacity, especially in challenging times during emergency responses. So these results kind of tell us more of what we kind of already know, right? 3/4 of respondents stated that reliable and resilient network was among the three most crucial communications considerations during emergencies. Okay, now it went on to kind of give us the details, what first responders carry. 88% of them have smartphones dedicated for their services with respect to their first response. Land mobile radios 80%, laptops 71%. And they're expecting those numbers to stay up in the 80s and 70s and those things in the future. 5G was mentioned. While it is not the number one priority, it is a priority in the future of public safety. So it looks like first responders understand the latency sensitive tasks that are coming their way, with respect to technologies, are going to require, standalone 5G networks to not only be very dense and to be very redundant, but to be very reliable and responsive. All right, so they're telling us what they need and what they want. And I think that's where Verizon thrives, right? They're trying to meet that demand. They focus on those things, they run these surveys, and then they kind of tailor the needs of those customers there. So where does T-Mobile fit in this, and why did I bring them into the fold? Well, T-Mobile has to do these things. If T-Mobile is going to offer first responder services, they're going to have to make their network these characteristics and qualities, which is reliable, which is resilient, which is critical for first responder connectivity. So some of the things that we saw previously in the survey, they're going to have to approach their network with that respect. If that doesn't happen, there's no way that they're going to penetrate this market. This is why I think they've had a really hard time with the things that they, say they want to do and they want to improve, but it's been very hard for them. The perception is that T-Mobile is the least reliable network. They haven't really been able to break through and change that as much, right, over time. The perception when we look at, first responders, they're looking for the most reliable, redundant network and the most resilient network. The T-Mobile doesn't show that within root metrics. First responders will have to try the T-Mobile network to see that's the case. I think, T-Mobile's done a nice job to offer free service to first responders for them to try it, get on the network and see how it is. But these are things that they're going to have to approach, and they're going to have to really push the narrative forward with respect to standalone 5G. They have an opportunity to do it. Technically, by definition, being on a standalone network core provides them with an opportunity to have lower latency than everyone else in the industry. Yet FirstNet from AT&T and Verizon first responders, the front line, they're the ones doing the customer snatching, right? I think T-Mobile's got to communicate this. I think they've got to create a QCI level of QoS for those customers. I know that they've talked about preemption on the network, build that into a network core functionality, and they can do that through SE. So T-Mobile has an opportunity. I think they've got to be very vocal and public about this build out with respect to these network core options, and they have to execute this if they're going to penetrate this market. There are millions of people in this customer segment, and it's something they can break through, but they've got to take stuff like this into consideration and make a priority in what they build. Do you guys think T-Mobile can do it? Can they penetrate the front line? Can they penetrate the first responder? Can they disrupt the FirstNet growth that we're seeing? Can they get the first responder? All right, what's it going to take, and do you think they can do it? Love to hear what you have to say on this. You are the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard.